Tonight we're going to be in Psalms 52. Psalms 52 is, I guess it's be considered David's account, or David talking about the account that took place in 1 Samuel 21:22. If you remember, David went and he went before Amalek and told him that he was on a secret mission from Saul, and being on that secret mission, he was needing some supplies. So Amalek, he was fearful when he seen David and questioned David about it. He thought that he was on a mission from the king, from Saul. He didn't realize that David was on the run from Saul based on what David told him. And he inquired to David, well, how come you don't have any supplies, and where's the men with you? And David said, well, I've got some men, but they're off somewhere else. At least that part David told was the truth. So he ended up giving him the showbread, that Jesus referenced in Mark when he was talking to the Pharisees about when his disciples came through and took the grain. They said they did that on the Sabbath, and he referred back to David and the priest giving him the showbread. So Amalek gives him provisions, and he also gives him Goliath's sword. Goliath that David slew. He gives him his sword, gives him the provisions that he needs. But in this process, Saul's chief herdsman or shepherd, it says he was detained there. Now, whether this is Doeg, he was the Edomite. He was detained there. Doesn't say what he was. Maybe he had done something that made him unclean, and he was waiting for that process to take place. Could have been a lot of different reasons he was there, detained, because he wasn't a very good person. But he was there, and he took the account of what went on between David and Amalek and the supplies that he gave him. And so as David fled, one thing Doeg didn't do is, I don't believe from the text of 1 Samuel 21:22 and what we can see here, I don't think he went right then to tell Saul about it. I think he waited for a moment that would benefit him the most. Well, that moment came along, and that moment was when Saul gathered all of them together, and he was saying, listen, you didn't do this for me. When Jesse's son is running wild doing this, if he was king, he wouldn't do this for you. He was kind of telling them, basically saying, y'all a bunch of sorry servants. You're not looking out for me as king. You're thinking about David. There's individuals, with David. So I think Doeg seen his opportunity there. So he spoke up to Saul and he said, well, as a matter of fact, I did see something. What I seen was Amalek, the priest, helped David, gave him provisions. Now, here's the thing about this situation. What David had said to the priest was basically all of it was a lie. What Doeg is saying to Saul is basically all the truth, but it's the reasons they do each one. What he's telling them is basically the truth. He's putting his own spin on it to say, he didn't say, well, Amalek thought he was doing this for you, and David deceived him and all this. He didn't say that. He said, they're helping, basically what he's saying, they're helping David. So he put his own spin, his own malicious spin to it. So Saul calls the priest there, and as he calls them there, he questions them. And Amalek, I think, is surprised because he didn't realize David wasn't there because of the king. Well, Saul gets mad because he says, you're helping David, you're giving him provisions, you're doing this. And he tells his soldiers, he says, you kill them. Kill all of them. There are 85 of them. You kill them. Well, they wouldn't do it. They didn't think it was right to do it. So he turned to Doeg, said, you kill them. And he killed them. He killed all 85. And actually in Nob there, he killed everything. He went on a killing frenzy, if you will. So we're dealing with a pretty malicious person here. We're dealing with someone who is mean, he's spiteful, he's waiting for his own moment to shine here, and because of it, individuals were slaughtered, innocent individuals. That's what David here is talking about in this psalm. This is the story that he's recounting, and he's talking about how awful and wicked Doeg is. And he does actually in Psalms, or not in Psalms, in 1 Samuel, I guess it's over in chapter 22, where David does take some recognition of what he did. When he was told that the priests were slaughtered, David says, well, they're slaughtered because of what I told them. So he takes some accountability for it to the extent of, okay, if I hadn't done that, then here they may have been alive. But here's David's recount of what took place. It's a pretty horrific event that took place. Innocent individuals were slaughtered because of it. But that's just how wicked this individual is. So let's look here, starting at verse 1. It says, "Why do you boast in evil, O mighty man?" Talking about Doeg here. It says, "The goodness of God endures continually. Your tongue devises destruction, like a sharp razor working deceitful. You love evil more than good, lying rather than speaking righteousness." Salah. "You love all devouring words, you deceitful tongue." So as David is describing him here, notice a couple things to start with. He starts with, why do you boast in evil? Why do you boast about this? And he's not talking about, I don't believe, in the research that I've done and different scholars, there were certain Hebrew words that David's using here. It's not just he's boasting or bragging about what he's done. He, within himself, is pretty smug and pretty bold and thinking, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm untouchable, almost as it were. It's about not just him bragging about who he is, it's just who he himself thinks he is. He actually thinks that he did some great thing here. He thinks he's some great person. He's boasting about this evil thing. He says, "Why do you boast in evil, O mighty man?" Some versions render this, "O man, a man of hero." A hero man. And it's got a question mark, and it's not just because why are you boasting, asking a question. It's almost some sarcasm here. "Oh, you mighty man, how great you are that you slaughtered these innocent priests who never even picked up a sword." If you think about Amalek, when David asked, do you have any weapon? He said, "Here is this sword of Goliath over here in the cloth." He didn't go even pick it up and give it to David. Were the priests the ones that went out for battle? Were they the ones that went out and fought? I mean, think about it. How hard would it be to slaughter a priest? What are they going to do to defend themselves? Well, they couldn't there in front of Saul anyway. It was an execution. But you think about this sarcasm, I think, that David's using here. Oh, mighty man. He's saying, oh, you boast that you're some great person, but look what you have to do to make yourself feel good, to make yourself feel mighty, to make yourself feel big. Look at this that you've done. And it's not that he just did this evil thing of getting them murdered. It's the timing and the reason for it. He could have run, and David knew. David said, as a matter of fact, when he was told they were killed, he said, "I knew Doeg would go and tell Saul." But from the story, it seems like it's apparent that he didn't just run and tell Saul right then. He waited for just the right moment that was going to make him look good or step in and kind of save the day and look good to the king, and that was his moment. That's when he did that. That's what makes him so evil. That's what makes him so just this person of, it just calls him evil. And he says here, I think now, granted, was he a mighty man in Saul's entourage? He was a head herdsman. He was over the servants, so he had a mighty position, you would say. But I think the way that David's referencing here is, "Oh, you mighty man." Look, I guess that just makes you feel good about that. I guess that just makes you feel like you're somebody that you were able to do this. So this is just how David is explaining it here. He says, "The goodness of God endures continually." So he's making a contrast here. He says, okay, you're boasting about evil. And he goes on and he starts talking about exactly who he is and what he's doing. But he says, I want you to know God's goodness, the goodness of God endures continually. So why do you think he interjects that here in the middle of, or just at the beginning of, talking about such a wicked person? Why do you think? Think it's important during all of that you remember how good God is? That His goodness is continually, even during bad events. Now we might want to ask ourselves, and I'll be honest, I ask myself this question when I read it, anytime I've read it, especially when I'm studying here, why did God allow that? When Jesus references to the Pharisees, did He say, David shouldn't have lied? David took the showbread, and he defended that, but he could have said, but David lied and got 85 men slaughtered because of it, 85 priests, and then everyone else. Why didn't He reference that to how horrible that was? Does that lie at David's feet? You think it does? It kind of seems to me it does. And David recognized that. You think about some of the decisions that David made, it's cost some individuals their lives, hadn't it? You think of Uriah, him trying to cover up his sin. Uriah and the soldiers that with him cost them their lives. You think about Uzzah with the ark. What's the reason Uzzah died? That was David's fault. They shouldn't have been carrying it on the cart. They should have been carrying it the way that God said for them to carry it, and Uzzah wouldn't have never touched it to start with. But the result's still the same. They died. Uriah died. The soldiers died with Uriah. Uzzah died. These priests died. All of this because of David. Now, we can defend David in some ways, especially here with the priest, and say, did the end justify the means? Why did he do it, and does it seem that God allowed it and thought it was okay? Why did God allow the priest, his anointed there, to die because of it? You start putting these things together, we could go to a lot of things. Why did he allow Job to suffer and have that conversation with Satan? Why did he do this? It really comes back to God's a sovereign God. That sometimes things don't seem fair and don't seem right, but we can't see the whole picture of things. We can't see the whole plan as it's laid out. But one thing we can see within those plans, okay, God may allow this to happen, but I think it teaches us several things. It's going to teach us this lesson about how wicked Doeg is, but it's also going to teach us we've got to be careful and aware of the things that we do because it affects those around us. We may think it may seem like something simple. Even David admitted himself in chapter 22 of 1 Samuel. He said, I knew Doeg was going to go to Saul. So if he knew that, what did he think was going to happen? But you think about that. What if David didn't get those provisions? How important were those provisions? How important was that bloodline of David? How important was it for David to stay alive? When we start putting it in those terms, you almost look, well, was it more important than the priest's lives? In our picture, it doesn't seem like it. But in the big picture, how does it work out? God knows the beginning from the end. Now, you can get into predestination. Did God cause that to happen, or did God, foreknowledge, know it's going to happen? And does God use the things that's happening for His benefit? That's the category I think we need to think about. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around these things when we start trying to analyze, well, why did it have to happen this way? Why did it have to happen this way? Well, we start looking at things that happen in our lives, and we think, okay, this is a tragic event, but this tragic event may have led to this. We don't know it. We didn't know the blessing that could be in it. We didn't know how this was going to turn out. There's just a lot of things that just goes unanswered. But when you look at this story on the surface and you see how David here is describing Doeg, you see he calls him evil. He said, you're boasting. He's talking about, and even David talks about at the end, he kind of gives himself he says, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I am. Here's how the righteous is compared to the wicked. It almost seemed like David's not taking any responsibility for this. But there's a lot we don't know within it, do we? With Psalms 51, the previous chapter that we just read, Was some of that repentance that we attribute to Bathsheba and Uriah, was some of that just David's repentance in general? That here I've made some bad decisions in my life. I've done some things that wasn't right. But you think about this situation that even Jesus referenced. It wasn't by coincidence. It wasn't by coincidence that they happened to go, Jesus and his disciples were going through out there, and they brushed their hands over and take some of the wheat to eat because they were hungry and had to be on the Sabbath, and that situation happened. You think that just happened up on Jesus, and he thought, I wonder what I'm going to say here. You think he already knew that was what's going to take place? Well, that wouldn't have took place if this hadn't took place. So you start seeing these things. It doesn't help our understanding to the point where it just looks horrible to us. But we can see these things played out. Any thoughts about this? This is a kind of a complex story, if you will.
So, one thing I think about is that, ultimately, God, when he puts tests in front of people, sometimes that involves people losing their life. You get other people outside of that.
Yeah.
For one, if these priests were in a right standing with God, God's going to take care of their souls, no matter how gruesome the death of it is. You have to remember, God's also testing Saul throughout all this. And Saul, he's the one standing in front of the priest of God that ends up saying, hey, go
Yeah.
kill him. I mean, God kind of allows people at times to dig their own grave. And that's why he can be called just. Like David said, you're just and you're right, no matter how you judge me. Yeah. Saul is going to do and make choices to where when God takes Saul down, no one can say, well, Saul, God kind of set Saul up. Saul is the one that makes the decision.
Yeah, you look at, God has always made sure that individuals knows the decision he makes and what he does. One, it's from God. You can look on Mount Carmel and see that, how it went against the prophets of Baal, that God left no doubt that was him doing that. So God always makes sure we know it. But you look on the other end of that, and Titus makes a good point, you look on the other end of that to the extent of, okay, for God to do what needs to be done when it comes to Saul and David, there's no better way to put it, Saul needs to dig his own grave here. And God, knowing that Saul's going to do that, this is all part. The blame relies on Saul, not God. This is Saul's hardness of his heart. This is Saul's rebellion against God. This is Saul turning his back on what he should be doing. This is just part of it. Now envy's taken over, jealousy's taken over. He can't get David, so he's going to get anybody that he possibly can that has anything to do with him. So this is Saul's rage here, helped by this wicked, evil man that's part of Saul's entourage, part of his command, his chief herdsman. So it just goes to show how bad Saul is, but he's so bad, look at the people that he's got around him. In his close cabinet, if you will. Now the soldiers here that Saul said, kill these, they knew better. We're not, they even went against Saul. They could have lost their lives because they disobeyed what the king said. But Saul himself, this is what gets me. This is what I read out of this when I started reading and thinking about it. Saul, as awful as he's getting about what he's doing, he didn't question the fact that the soldiers didn't do it. Because Saul knew it was wrong. He knew the order that he gave was wrong, but then he turned to the man he knew would do it. He knew how wicked Doeg was, I believe. He knew, okay, I'm going to put this for him, because he doesn't do anything about it. What king doesn't do something about his soldiers not obeying his orders? So Saul knows it's not right, but he knows the man that's going to do it, and that's what David is referring to here. David is talking about how wicked this individual was. It's not just about him killing these priests. This man was wicked already. This is just showing it, and it shows the people that Saul has close to him that he knew would do it. It's Saul's order, but it's the wicked one here that's doing it, and all this is kind of playing out now where you can truly see who these individuals are. And it's a very interesting story as you start. You might read the story and think, well, that's pretty horrible. But as we have the benefit of Scripture, as we start studying in different places and studying through, we have the benefit of start putting these pieces together, and we can say, okay, here's, as they say, evil's raised its evil head. It's finally got to where you can see it. And these are things that happen where God puts them out there and says, okay, I'm showing my works through this way on good, but I'm showing my works here that I'm letting them show how evil they are before my wrath comes upon them. As he said many times, their cup of wrath's not full yet. God waits till that cup of wrath gets full. He waits till there's no doubt that this is, and he's done this to cities. Remember, he waited on the Amorites because of what they did to Israel as they come out. And he waited and waited till that cup of wrath was full, and then he took his vengeance out on them. So, or his wrath on them.
You're also forgetting here that Saul was a very wicked man too, because he's the one who gave the order.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to carry out that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, yeah, he didn't want to do it himself. And he was well capable. He was a man of war.
He was a wicked man.
Yeah.
So God lets us see the reason why he's taken him out of the kingship.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ultimately gets like he's got Doeg, like the fixer. Like you almost got the guy will get his hands dirty. Saul ends up going to a witch, this enchantress. So by the time he dies, he has this whole almost comic book gallery of evil people around him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got his... And you're just seeing this, and notice, he wasn't like that to the people from the beginning, There's a lot of things transpired, but God is letting this play out so we can see, especially when David takes over, and how this is going to be, because that's how wicked he is, Again, it's a it's a tragic story, but a very interesting story to play out.
And he's defying God the whole time, trying to kill David,
Mm-hmm.
because he knew that he was taking his place.
Yeah, you start looking at it. Yeah, you start looking at it. Yeah, did David lie to the priest? Yeah, he did. There's no getting around that. David even admits that. But that don't change the fact that Saul was wicked to begin with. That don't change the fact that anybody David come in contact with was going to die. Matter of fact, when one of the priests, I guess the son actually stayed, he must have stayed behind when Saul called them all over there to him, because he actually escaped and actually told David, and David told him, well, basically he said, well, you're a dead man just like I am too. You need to stay with me to be safe. So Saul was going to kill anybody that had anything to do with David, so he could do no wrong. But what's David going to do? Starve to death? What is he? And you start thinking, well, is there ever justifiable lying? You look at Abraham. Abraham lied about Sarah being his sister. Was that a half-truth? That was a half-truth, wasn't it? Of what he said about it, but he was fearing for his life, and luckily God intervened there. But you see different situations where faithful men were put in situations to where it doesn't make it right or wrong. It doesn't make it that God approves of it, but you start seeing how these things play out. One, you see where when man starts making his own decision and goes away from God and don't fully trust in God, you see consequences of that. And we see that even throughout David's life, especially through Saul's life, as far as his kingship. So you start seeing these things. But then you got Doeg here right in the middle of this. Just, I just see him as this little minion that he's just waiting to do whatever he can to make himself look better in the eyes of Saul and maybe the soldiers. He could look at them and say, I don't care to kill him, I'll kill him. Well, how hard is that? David calls him, you mighty man. How hard is it to kill a priest? Here you are, and look at what they're supposed to be doing. How hard could it really be? But if it makes you feel like a big man, then I guess it did. But here it goes on to describe him as he is. Verse 2. Your tongue devises destruction, like a sharp razor working deceitful. You love evil more than good, lying rather than speaking righteousness. You love all devouring words, you deceitful tongue. So he starts showing who he really is. He said, your speech can tell it. You just love devising destruction. You're like a sharp razor. You love evil more than good. So what's coming out of his mouth? The Bible tells us, so a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. That's what we're seeing with Doeg here. We're seeing truly how evil he is with his words. In James chapter 3, beginning at verse 6, notice it says, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body, sets on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast, bird, or reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no one can tame the tongue. It's unruly evil, full of deadly poison with its blessing. You know, when he's describing the tongue, look how much damage the tongue has done. Man can't tame it. You know, you look at what Doeg did here, the things that he said were true. Wasn't some of the things that Satan said in the garden true? Wasn't some of the things that Satan said to Jesus true? He even quoted Scripture. But it's how he used those words. It's how Doeg used these words. You know, there's a lot that he could have added to that I think could have helped the situation. But he just said, you know, the priest gave David provisions. Well, there's a lot else that he left out of that could have helped, but he didn't. So he loved evil more than he does good. He loves these destructive words. He's like a sharp razor. And that's one thing. When you say something, here's the thing about it. Can you unsay it? Can the person unhear it? You can ask forgiveness, you can repent, you can move on, but you can't unsay it, and the person can't unhear it. So no matter what it is, that's what's so deadly about the tongue, is once it's said, you can't do anything about it. Now, you can go on like it never was, that you never said these evil things, or someone didn't say this evil something to you. You can go on and say, okay, they repented, they changed, but you can't unhear it. That's the thing. You can't go back and unsay it. You know, I was talking yesterday, and my mom was there, and we were just kind of talking, and we were saying just different things, and something was said about the mouth, and she's like, yep, that's what got you in trouble most of the time is your mouth, you know. And it still does. I guess, hadn't learned too much. I'm just older and kind of, it's on different things now than it was when I was a kid. But, you know, I really respect individuals when you talk to them and they're sitting there and they're thinking about what they're going to say. You know, I don't do that. Unfortunately, now I think about it after I said it and think, you know, I should have said that a different way, or I could have put it this way. I just say it. You know, once it's here, I just say it. And I think, why don't you just stop for a minute and think about what you're about to say? How's this person going to proceed? So, because that's the thing too. Our tongue is, we may say it, but are we in control how a person hears it? No, we're not. So should we be aware of that? You ever said something and someone take it different than you mean it? I've done that. I've said something, someone's took it different. Someone said something, says things to me that I've took different than what they mean. But it's the same way. You can't undo that. You can't help how somebody perceives it, and you can't help sometimes how you perceive it. So we have to be careful with our words. Who said something? Oh, Aiden.
I also want to add, even Jesus told his disciples, you know, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Mm-hmm. You know, a wise man told me one time, he said, if you really want to know how a person truly is, just watch them, listen to them for a while. They'll reveal themselves after a while. And that's true, because out of the abundance heart man speaketh, so a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. You know, you watch a person and listen to a person, you'll know how they are. And that's how David is describing him. How does he know that? You know, he sees that. He's heard that. He's been a part of that. He's seen that destruction that these words can have. Lying rather than speaking righteousness. You love all devouring words. You deceitful tongue. He's calling him the whole shebang. You're who your tongue is. You're what you say. You're the evil that's coming out of your mouth. That's who you are, he says. And as he says here, that's what happens when it comes to the tongue. He says, who have been made in the substitute of God, out of the same mouth proceedeth blessings and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not be so. He says, out of the same mouth you're going to do this or do this. He said, it's going to show who you are. And that's what happened here to Doeg. It's truly showing who he is. And it says he loves evil. Notice also here, starting in verse 5, He said, God shall likewise destroy you forever. He shall take you away, pluck you out of your dwelling place, uproot you from the land of the living. He says, the righteous also shall see the fear, and shall laugh at him, saying, here is the man who did not make God his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and strengthened himself in his wickedness. Now here it tells truly who he is and how he got there. And he says, here's how he got there, that he didn't make God his strength. He trusted in his own riches and strengthened himself in his wickedness. So he didn't trust in God as his strength. He trusted in himself. And when you start trusting in yourself, then what happens? You become that person, and you start thinking, remember he started out saying, you were a boastful person. So to himself, he thinks he's this big person anyway, that he's just this mighty man. And he says you start thinking about yourself, your strengths in yourself, then that kind of thought, that kind of wickedness, guess what that leads to? It leads to actions. And here the actions were the slaying of these innocent people. So it's just a progression of who you are. But notice what he says here. There's a couple things to me that's interesting. He says, God shall likewise destroy you. He's contrasting, okay, here's who you are. You're not trusting in God, but here's what God's going to do and can do. He's going to destroy you. He's going to take you away. He's going to pluck you out of your dwelling place, uproot you from the land of the living. In other words, he's going to call your hand on this, and he's going to grab you, and he's going to uproot you, and he's going to destroy you. Now, you can rebel against God all you want to, but this is what he's going to do. But notice here what he says. And he says, the righteous also shall see and fear and shall laugh at him. Why doesn't the wicked see this and fear? Why does he say the righteous do? Is this something, a learning thing for the righteous too? The wicked see it, but the wicked don't learn from it. If I'm a wicked person, I may see this happen, but I won't learn nothing from it. It don't mean anything to me. I'm still going to live any way that I want to live anyway. But to the righteous, they see this wicked person, and notice what it says. It says, and shall laugh at him. Some versions say laugh over him. In other words, it seems like to me there's a little sense of vindication there. Yeah, you're this evil person, and this is what you're doing to individuals, but this is what God's going to do to you. We're going to laugh because you're not going to last. You think you're this great person, but you're not. The righteous is just going to laugh about it and say, you thought you were this, but you're not. In other words, who gets the last laugh? It's a little bit here of, and I tell you, and I guess that says something about me, I love when you see things like this. You see the worst, you see the bad, you see what it says God's going to do, then you've got the righteous here saying, yep, that's what's going to happen. God said that's what's going to happen. That sense of vindication there of, it may not be for you, you may not have done it, but we are vindicated through God's victory. With God showing that He is stronger, that shows that all children of His are the same. No matter what this world can do, you can't defeat it. As David said in, what psalm was it when he talked about how the cities will rage against God to no avail? It's useless. They think they can battle against God, but God will destroy them. And it's the same thing here, he's saying. God, here's this wicked person. God's going to pluck you up from your dwelling place. You think you're safe. You think you're there with Saul, and maybe he is in a palace or something. I don't know. He said, God's going to pluck you out of there. You think you're in this great position, but you're not going to be there for long. God, when that cup of wrath is full, your time's over. And there's some sense of gratification and vindication in that as Christians, to hang on. Yeah, the world is wicked. The world's going to do things. And it says here the righteous can learn and see and fear. What do? We see and fear to make sure we're not like that we shouldn't be like that we need to control our tongue. We need to control what we're saying and understand what we're doing means something. And the righteous can understand and fear with that, but by the same token, we still get to see that the victory is His. So in that, we learn, okay, victory's going to be His. What side am I going to be on? I want to be on this side. That's what I fear. That's what I'm learning. That's what I'm seeing. I don't want to be on this side. And sometimes Satan's words and the wicked's words can sway us into thinking, okay, it might be better on this side. And it's showing us here that, no, it's not. Here's the end. The end may not be right now, but the end's coming. And we can be assured of that. But he trusted in his riches here. Notice what the Apostle Paul said about this. 1 Timothy 6, beginning at verse 6. He said, now godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, it's certain that we've carried nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Now notice here, it says he trusted in the abundance of his riches. What did trust in his riches have to do with his wicked talk? What did it have to do with him going to Saul at that right time and telling him what happened between David and Amalek? What did riches have anything to do with that?
He felt secure.
Yeah, he felt secured. I think he felt like he's going to get some money out of it. He's going to get a higher position out of this. That's why I believe he waited to the right time to tell Saul. He didn't run to him right away. He waited for that right moment when he could look better than anybody else that was around Saul, and he thought he could profit from it. So what's this tell you? What was it about? It was about material things. It was about riches. It's about power, prestige. It's about these types of things. The root of all kinds of evil. So what was at the root of his maliciousness? What was at the root of his lying? Greed, money, riches. Trusting in the abundance of his riches. I guess I heard probably 3 times this week that reference, 1 Timothy reference. Every single time it was referenced wrong. How do people usually reference it? Money is the root of all evil. I heard that 3 times this week at some different places, at the funeral home and once at the graveyard. But 3 times I heard that, and all 3 times I was like, that's not what it says. It doesn't say money is the root of all. How is it says? I done forgot it backwards now.
Money is the root of all evil.
Yeah. The love of money. That's right. Money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money. That's where it belongs. And see, we get that. We just equate money with evil. It's not that. It's the love of it. And what it basically is, notice it says it's the root of all kinds of evil. So what it tells us is that is the root. When I've trusted in that, the love of that, and not the love of God, then that's going to sprout up evil. It can't sprout up anything else because it's the root of it. It's the very beginning when we trust in something else besides God. And sometimes that's not easy to do, is it? I mean, do we love money? Do we love what money can do? Yeah. Do we love what it can do? What it can provide? The power it can show? I mean, there's a lot of things that money can do, but it's like everything else. It's the abuse of it and the love of it that's the problem. It's not it itself. But that goes back to the root of the problem. So a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. If that's the root, if that's where we're at, then that's where we're going to head. And that, it says here, is where it is. He said he trusted in the abundance of his riches and strengthened himself in his wickedness. So it comes from him. You don't trust in God. And our final 2 verses. He says, but I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. Trust in the mercies of God forever and ever. I will praise you forever because you have done it. And in the presence of your saints, I will wait on your name, for it is good. You know, when I read this, it almost made me think, so David's saying, I don't have any part in this. Look, you're wicked. Look how good I am here. And this is actually one of the places where David does this. Usually David don't trust in his own things. But he's saying here he's going to praise God. But this is just a side note for me, I do find it interesting that even in this psalm, even though David does take some responsibility in 1 Samuel 22, I guess these last two verses I struggle with a little bit with David's true meaning of it. I know he's saying, I'm going to praise God and I'm trusting in you, but it's almost like, okay, here's what Doeg is, but look over here to me. I'm not like that. I don't think that's what David's doing, but it does kind of seem like. Anybody got any thoughts of that?
I think that, again, that is hard for us to swallow. But David says, I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever.
That's
He
true.
doesn't say,
That's true.
I trust in that I'm God's golden boy and I can do no wrong towards God. I mean, David and Doeg are both sinners. David and Doeg are both responsible for murder in different cases. So I think that David, again, and it comes back to us. A lot of times we don't even feel like we can truly be forgiven. We think, well, we say, well, God will forgive little sins, but the bad things I do, God won't even forgive me. But David, I think, is a man that not only was he capable of great repentance, he actually believed that God forgave him.
Oh, yeah.
In which case, he can kind of say these kind of things, and it's difficult to think, well, that's kind of bragging almost. But on the other hand, you could say, well, he really believes that God's forgiven him.
I guess you touched on the right word there, trusting in the mercy of God. I guess that is saying more toward his, he knows he needs to be forgiven and how he had to do.
Verse 9, I'll praise you forever
Yeah.
because you have done it.
Yeah.
He says, I'm a green tree in the house of God, not because of me, but I'll praise you forever because you have done it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a difference of where you're
Right.
at in faith.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I appreciate that. Because, if we didn't know David, through the other songs that we've read and some other things we do, and that's why you got to be careful. You got to be careful on how you read something and take the context of it, because it can, in your mind, mean something that you don't think that it does. And I knew it didn't mean David was bragging, but you can look at it and see that, to me, it can appear like that. I wouldn't want to say it. That's exactly right. Because he contrasted how Doeg was, and then you see this. It's an interesting story, and I encourage you to go back and read 1 Samuel 21, 22, and all the surrounding things concerning it, because it was a pretty horrific event and a staple event that the chain effects of it extended far beyond just that event. But what surrounded that event did put in place a lot of different things, and it is an interesting study. I appreciate you listening.